Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, Secret Witches. How are we all? I have been feeling so nourished recently by being in our apothecary membership. We've been journeying with and are going to be journeying with the remedy of phosphorus for the next few months. And she's really a symbol, an archetypal symbol of what is on the end of a match. Of course, when you strike that sensitive, beautiful match, it ignites our inner flame, our passion and desire. So she's a symbol and represents the sensitive inner wounded healer within us, who's here to be a torch for others as she learns to heal and alchemize all of her wounding around sensitivity and her inner fire. And so my heart has been really full recently to be gathered with like-minded women, exploring magic together through archetypal remedies, myths and stories. If you're feeling the call to join us, I would love for you to follow that nudge. There is a whole library of all the archetypal remedy journeys that I have led before, and you are so welcome. If you want to find out more, simply head to nicolebarton.co.uk/membership. For now though, we have a juicy episode lined up for you. On The Secret Witch Show today, we have our guest Yolanda Williams. Now, Yolanda has been with us before. This is her second time on the show, and she is a Reiki Master Teacher, energetic alchemist, and host of the Reiki Radio podcast. Certified in wellness counselling through Cornell University, her work helps women come into sacred relationship with themselves, revealing the interconnected nature of mind, body, spirit, and energy. In this beautifully intimate and thought-provoking conversation, we explore what it truly means to live life as both magician and human, to become a conscious creatrix of our life whilst honouring our very real, often very messy humanness. Yolanda shares openly about her own journey through energy work, healing, emotional repression, and the descent into her body, illuminating how sensitivity and self-awareness can become the very tools of our transformation. And together we speak to the truth that we are always working with energy, whether consciously or unconsciously, and how our thoughts, feelings and words are spells shaping our lives. This is an essential conversation for the Secret Witch who is navigating the tension between her spiritual gifts and her everyday human experience, which is most of us, and for those who long to trust that you are already the magic that you are seeking. Let's dive in. Welcome back, Yolanda. I have been so looking forward to this conversation because it really speaks to, I think, like a core kind of myth, I guess. It like debunks a myth and that speaks to a dissonance that we can kind of feel, that we're kind of looking outside ourselves for our magic, particularly as secret witches. And you and I both know that the path of the witch, the healer, the creatrix, or if you want to call her like the magician or the priestess, like it's not just one of doing magic or looking outside for our magic. It's about becoming more of the magic and expressing more of the magic that we already are through our humanness as well. So I was really excited when you shared this topic with me. To see where we'll end up. But yeah, so I know your work holds kind of all of that, that kind of groundedness, the embodiment, and is very like spiritually potent as well. So I'm looking forward to diving in. And thank you for being here again as a second time guest.
I know. I'm so excited to be here again. Thank you. And you've been on my podcast a few times as well. So it's always fun getting to chat with you. Yeah.
I love that. I remember when we last recorded together, I was like, oh, we should just do this and have tea. Like,
yes.
And we've both got water, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like a gorgeous, just like two soul sisters having a chat. So I love having you on. Okay, let's dive in. So, I guess, as you know, like the premise of my modality and my work is that women's stories are healing remedies for others. Like I think we're all archetypal remedies for each other. So I usually start with, like, can you welcome yourself and share your story? But I know you've already done that a little bit because you've been on the show before. So I'm wondering if there's something you can speak to in your journey around the topic that we're here to explore, which is, of course, like how to live as both magician and human, discover your gifts by uniting mind, body, and spirit. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about your journey with that, about kind of learning to unite all of that.
Yeah. So I would say the interesting thing is now people mainly associate me with Reiki, which I love and I teach. And but I've studied many other things, including magic and hermeticism and all sorts of systems. And what all of those did is they gave me a broader lens and understanding about Reiki and even really what Reiki was pointing towards. So when I started all of this work, there was a lot of wanting to disassociate with myself. And, you know, being in body was really challenging because I had a lot of emotions that were erupting and a lot of confusion. And the healing process after the fun, shiny aspects of like, ooh, energy work, this is so cool. When I started cracking open, it didn't feel good and it wasn't really fun. And at that time, I really didn't know what the point was. Like, even though everyone talked about energy work being healing, I mean, again, it was just like, oh, this is kind of fun. I don't think I really understood the implication and the impact of really healing and different aspects of yourself cracking open. So fast forward from that beginning stage a bit, thankfully, there was a part of me that did understand that was part of the healing process. So while I was pissed, I mean, I was like cursing out the universe at one point. I still stuck with the process. And then in studying Hermeticism, there was this phrase or focus of know thyself, master thyself, become thy true self. And then it really started to click like, okay, I have to get to know who I am. I have to really sit with whatever it is that is held within my consciousness. This isn't just about some kind of fluff. This isn't just about, you know, being just this happy, magical fairy. Like, hopefully I'll get there one day. But, you know, I really understood I kind of had to walk through the fire and understand not just who I was from the lens of how I had identified myself because of my life, but what was the aspect of me that I didn't know yet? What was the aspect of me that was truly magical, that was truly, you know, in her power and her strength and her authority that had been masked for so long? So it was this interesting realization of there are these many layers of getting to know the self-identified aspect of me and which aspects within that were just based on story and projections and weren't necessarily true. And then also, how do you embrace that you are a magical being, that we all are? Because it's one thing to say it, but, you know, a lot of us have to work through different layers to accept that as true. Like, am I good enough? Am I worthy? What does that mean? Does that mean I'm trying to brag? Like, you know, all of these kind of questions where we may resist the embracing of like, whoa, I'm so much more than I thought I was. So, yeah, I would say a lot of this work has really thrown me into this deep curiosity of what it means to be human and awakened in the expression of what we are. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I love that. Yeah. I'm like, bing, bing, bing. Okay, where are we going? I love this so much. Especially like there's so much like I can really relate to a lot of what you've shared there around particularly the journey. I think this is really an important one for the Secret Witch. When we kind of start to first come to like exploring energy healing, we often do have that sense of like, oh, this is fun. Let's have a look. And then we kind of play with it for a while. And I often say the work that we're doing in this path, or, any of the your path, all of the paths into like real magic, I guess you could call it, although even that's kind of a projection, but that's going down a rabbit hole to dive into that one. But I guess like there's like almost like a deepening that I'm hearing you speak to. It's like we start off with like, oh, this is shiny and fun and it feels good. And we're like, okay, love and light, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And then at some point, there's like almost like I call it like a descent back into the body to kind of come home to the deep work of meeting our humanness. I don't know if that's necessarily how you would describe it, but that's what I'm hearing you saying. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, because again, I think for me personally, prior to coming into this work, I was just functioning really on autopilot and living life, with a lot of checklist of what I thought I was supposed to do to be a responsible young adult. When I came into this work, I was 33. And so, there was a lot of still curiosity of who I was, what I was being, how I identified. But it wasn't based on, the true desire of my own heart. Like there was a lot that even what my interests were, or what I was curious about, those things would go under the list of not responsible. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to be a photographer. My mom was like, are you crazy? Like that's not responsible. What do you mean? These kinds of things. So there was a lot of not just revealing to myself how I was functioning and why, but then again, listening to the aspect of myself that was more resonant with who I truly was, and not being angry and not blaming anyone else for what I did or didn't do in my life to that point. So there was just so many layers of not just being more soft and compassionate with myself, but then also like with my mom, for example, there was a lot of resentment that I held towards her for many things that I didn't realize. And I had to also step back and see her just as a human, not with the title of my mom, but just a human, and this woman who did the best she could. And there's aspects of her life I would never understand. So there's a lot of unraveling, a lot of curiosity, but another modality that kind of helped me understand this work happened to be tarot. So tarot was something I didn't want to touch for a while. I started out with oracle cards, and tarot, I was like, oh no, I heard it's spooky. But when I got over that, the cards that are considered scary in there actually are some of my favorite cards now. But anyway, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the depiction of the magician specifically really helped me understand this concept of us being like mediators between the realms, us being like these beautiful conduits of higher intelligence while also here on the earth plane, and those energies, those expressions being unified within us. And the magician in that card is practicing under like a vine of roses, which is symbolic for the saying sub rosa, which is to practice in secrecy. So even that expression was like, oh, this is a very self-reflective inner working. This is about me. It's not about, anyone else's impression of me or having to expose all that I'm doing. Right now, I need to kind of keep this close to myself of what I'm working through and what I'm discovering. But then the other element of the magician is he has the representation of all of the elements, the 4 suits on his table. And so I understood from other studies that the elements represent different aspects of us. So it came to me of really understanding, oh, I have to examine each part of my expression, my thought forms, my emotional body, my relationship to my drive, my will, my determination. And am I even in relationship to my body? Am I even in this thing? Like, am I present? Right? So all of these different layers revealed to me what kind of magician am I being. So I
I love
started to recognize like we are literally born as, we are designed as magicians, but we're either creating and using our magic haphazardly because we don't realize what we're capable of, or
mm,
we're creating from our fears, our doubts, our worries, these stories, or we become these very conscious magicians where we
mm,
are intentional and understand the work that is necessary within our own being to
mm.
become clear conduits and mediators between the realms.
I love that so much. It's, again, like throwing in another 20 threads where I could go with this.
Yeah.
I think there's also like for me in the magician, what you were just talking about there, there's also like I often call this like the creatrix aspect as well. So I really hear what you're saying there. What I did love about what you said, and this is kind of a bit of a tangent, is the piece about secrecy. Like we can do this in secret, and we can be in that kind of inner work, which feels so liberating in many ways, because I think a lot of secret witches can arrive here feeling shame about being secret.
Right.
And actually, almost like it's part of the journey of reclaiming our liberated witch who can speak out and express who she is to be in that inner work. So I think there's like a really gorgeous thread there, which feels like a little bit of a tangent. So I don't know if there's necessarily anything more to explore there, but I just wanted to name that because I think we can kind of shame ourselves for even being secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whereas there's a gift in that. So that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I'll just pause there and see if there is anything you want to add to that.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, even now, I do share a lot of what I may be going through or my relationship to this work because, I have a podcast, although I interview people primarily now, but there's a lot that I share, whether, in my classes or whatever I'm doing. But there are always aspects of what I'm working on in the moment that are very sacred and private to me. And I don't necessarily expose what I'm working on real time just because I don't want outside influence. I don't need outside projections. I don't need other people's points of view. It's something for me to really examine and sit with for myself. And like while I may work with, like other energy healers or a coach or something like that, we all have aspects that we do keep to ourselves. Like all of us are going to leave this planet with secrets.
Yeah.
All of us are going to leave this planet with aspects of people not really understanding what our true point of view was, or true perspective was, or true feeling was about so many things. So there are pieces that I keep it's like very intimate at a time. And then when I actually do work through whatever the alchemical process is with that thing on the other side, then I often am more open to share because maybe what I went through or how I did it will help you. But there's definitely an element of secrecy.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I'm glad that you added that on actually, because again, I often say, our wound becomes our gift, but I agree with you. Like we kind of want to go in and work with it ourselves first, so that we can reclaim the gold from whatever it is, and then it can become a lesson for others, a mirror for others. And so in the same way, that's why people become remedies. And that brings me nicely back to the fact that we have to embrace our human to be able to be a remedy. And yet there is this resistance that can come up, just going back to what we were talking about earlier, like how we can often want to be in that witch play, and kind of almost like we feel the call. Like it's like the push pull, isn't it? Like we feel like, oh, okay, this is juicy. Actually, there's something here that like I'm as we start to be called back down. As for me, it was very much like a descent back into remembering that I was human. I was like, oh, hang on, oh yeah, I forgot that I had a body. Like, but she's let me know. She's reminded me through like for me, it was a paralyzed face in birth when I gave birth, and I feel like the body calls us home when we forget. And so I had very much been, drifting around, just thinking, oh, I just got to ascend to spirit and be happy and love and light, and almost got slapped back down to the ground. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, because I think it's almost like central to that piece about uniting the body and that kind of spirit and being in unity.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of that thing, I think, that's interesting. The lessons we come here to learn in the realm of duality. And I think because of a lot of our very human experiences, we have a misconception of what it means to be human. So not just because of what we've gone through in our own suffering, we look out in the world and we may see other behaviors we don't agree with, or things that other humans do where I think we even unconsciously create this disassociation with, I can't be that thing, right? And so then a lot of us will come into this work and it sounds like, ooh, the spiritual aspect, this ascended being is better than being human, but not realizing that you're not separate from that. Even your humanness, your material aspect, your physical sensory, your physical ability, the abilities in this human body to experience emotion, to experience, this expansive way of working with thought forms. It's the beauty of being human and embodied. So I think a lot of this work is really at the foundation, recognizing where we are disassociating, not with body, but also our humanness, what our idea of is human. Like if you even ask someone, what does it mean to be human, or what are humans like? A lot of people will automatically go to, oh my God, people are crazy. I mean, people say this all the time, like people are crazy. I don't know what's wrong with people. But really, there's so much beauty to even the, what we may consider the lower aspect. And really, this work is about activating that higher intelligence, what we may call spiritual, right? The higher intelligence is actually embedded within us. And this is what we talk about, this awakening. There's this aspect of divine intelligence that is even the basis of why we all exist. We wouldn't even exist. So it's like, it's already who you are. But again, you have to get to know all of these layers of you to have this understanding, to allow the healing, the compassion, and the acceptance of, to be really in the full embodiment of being a secret witch, a magician, a healer, whatever it is that you resonate with. It is accepting the beauty and the heartache of this experience here on earth, while simultaneously recognizing that there is an aspect of you that is not judging, that completely understands, that signed up for this and wants you to awaken and merge with the magic of who and what you are. So yeah, I think we just have to, in a lot of ways, this work kind of throws us into this re-knowing or re-understanding of what human is.
I love that so much. There's something in that around, like, I remember there's a quote, and I was just trying to look for it, about like grief is praise because it's the natural way love honors what it misses. And it's almost like there's a sense of, until we're able to go into the depths of feeling, like we're also not able to fully experience life and fully experience magic as well. What you were just sharing just kind of reminded me of that. And yet at the same, so there's that, and then what else came up for that in which I'm just going to name now so that in case we want to come back to it, is this piece around, I just had a realization of, like, because I often think about how tempting it is, and I think there's a question around, like, why we try and escape our bodies, but there's something for me around, like, we often will kind of almost like bypass our bodies with spirituality, unintentionally, again, like it's part of what we do. But what was just coming up as you were sharing, with a sense of, like, almost like striving for perfection. It's almost like we strive to be so perfect and so spiritual that we kind of bypass that humanness. And I don't know where that came from, but it just came up as you were speaking. I can't remember which bit in particular relation to, but it was just like, oh, what if what we're doing is actually just trying to be perfect, when actually we're perfect as we are.
Right. Yes. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things for people to wrap their head around. I mean, again, like going back to the whole idea of know thyself, master thyself, become thy true self. The knowing thyself, I think, is the hardest part of it all. Like looking and starting to recognize and realize we may have completely misunderstood who we are. And we may have been carrying these, this burden of self-imposed judgment and criticism, or that we believed what other people said about us, or that we actually said yes to a lot of restrictions and limitations that we experienced in our life, right? So the knowing thyself, I mean, just ground level. I think once we can sit in that and really just be observers. And again, this curiosity always comes up for me. I'm like, instead of being judgmental, be curious. Ask why. Why? What was that part of me that, believed whatever I believed in my 20s? Okay. Can I have compassion for that aspect of myself who was just functioning from her fear and her wounds and her worry and da 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 da? You would have that same compassion for anyone who told you your story. If someone else told you their story, but it was really a mirror of yours, you would have compassion for them. So why can't you have the same for you? So, and we continue, like even when we move to now that I'm aware of how I'm functioning and why, now the mastery part is, how do I consciously choose? How do I direct my mind to the higher or not? What choices do I make? What is it based on? What's my motivation, right? Now I'm really consciously engaged in taking responsibility and accountability for the kind of magician I'm being. I'm not blaming everyone else around me. I am the one that is creating and contributing to this life experience, right? But we can't manage it if we don't even know what we're managing. So that's why the knowing ourselves is so very important. And why, I mean, just to say, Nicole, for all people that feel drawn to want to be healers or hold space or help others, that's why it always comes back to like the healer heal thyself concept. Like you have got to do the work for you to have understanding, because I have a teacher that told me one time, you're only going to go as deep with other people as you're willing to go with yourself. And it's so true.
No, I absolutely, completely agree with that, and believe it's the only. There was a quote I shared actually on Instagram this month, and I think I said something like, "Ancient medicine women didn't go and get certificates; they had to live into, like, they drank their own potions first and had to live into becoming their own remedy." And that's so that's like firmly what I believe, is that to become healers, we have to be able to. I call it healing ourselves, but you could also say know yourself. And for me, and it's just reminded me as well of like the exploration through my lens of homeopathy, is that what's healing through the lens of homeopathy and the laws of homeopathy, the idea is that it's suppression that causes illness or disease. And so what I hear you speaking to there is like this process of like radical honesty, like in order to heal.
Yeah. I mean, because it's so interesting to me. A lot of this work, it's so simple. It's just a matter of us also, stepping out of that conditioning of thinking for things to work or to be important, they have to be complex. And so it's like, even that, it's almost, we can't even hear it because it's so simple. But yes, if you are honest with you about what it is you feel, it's funny, Nicole, when you said about really getting in touch with our feelings and, like the other layers of life that open up. Yeah. Back when I was, I don't know, maybe like 30, it was around 30. I was, working in corporate. I worked in finance at a very stressful job. And then I was in a 5-year relationship that was ending, and it was stressful. I mean, I just had stress coming from, this was all leading up to getting into this work, which took a few years, but yeah. But anyway, someone I knew at the time, they said, "Oh, you should go see a therapist." And I was like, "Ugh, well, I don't need to talk to someone about my feelings. I know, like, because I'm such a thinker, I thought, like, I know what I'm thinking. I don't need someone to get me to think, right?" And so anyway, I ended up going to the therapist, and I don't know, we had conversations about whatever, but she ended up one day saying, like, are you in touch with your feelings? Can you identify your emotions? And it was just such an odd question to me. And when she asked it, I remembered years prior, one of my best friends said, whenever I tell stories, I tell them very like from an analytical lens. If I'm telling you I had an experience that probably was emotional, I don't mention any aspect of what I felt.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So say if I like went through a breakup or something and most people would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so hurt, da da da. I would say, yeah, it didn't pan out. And so we're moving on. Like the emotional aspect was always void. So this therapist, she even tried to get me to like the EDM, I think it's called. It's like the lights where, you know, rapid eye movement. And she said, think of something sad. So I thought of my grandmother's funeral. So I'm looking back and forth with the lights, trying to conjure up whatever she's trying to make me feel, right? So we do this for however long, and then and I'm not crying. And she said, do you feel anything? Like, did anything come up for you? And I'm like, well, memories that I forgot. Like, I remember different aspects of it, but no, I'm not, you know, feeling emotional. And she told me, she said, you will miss out on a whole other tapestry of life if you don't allow yourself to tune into your emotion. And at the time, I thought she was crazy. I was like, what is this lady? Because I really didn't understand. I was such a person who had repressed emotion so much that I didn't even realize, I didn't recognize it. So for me, like sadness or whatever, any other emotion would just come out as frustration from being suppressed. So I was very familiar with like, oh, I'm angry, but I didn't really identify something's hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
And it took many years of going deep into this work where all of a sudden I was a crybaby, Nicole. I was just like, like stuff started erupting. And I finally understood what that woman was telling me. And it changed my life. So I say that to say, with even what you're saying, it is so true and points back to how this work doesn't allow for you to deny any aspect of your design or your function. You have to know you from every facet of your design.
I love that so much. And I think it's one of the reasons why as secret witches, we can really feel the fear of leaning in. Like I know when we first feel like that call to even, you know, to magic, to all of the things and to being a healer, if that's what women are here for, like we feel so much fear. And I think part of that, and I'd love to know what you feel about this, is because we've been so used to like shutting down our feelings and so used to, especially because the natural tendency as magical women is to be sensitive. And so we've always had to shut down that sensitivity because just to cope with life, like because the modern world is so crazy. It is, you know, to be a human in this world as a sensitive human is a challenge. And I wonder, like, I wonder what you feel, but like my sense is that almost like has us as a protective mechanism, like how we have to shut down and disconnect. And so it's so important, even though like we will feel that fear. And I always say, like, you know, fear isn't a stop sign, it's a doorway. Like, and it really feels like that sensitivity, that disconnection is what often will call us into magic. It's like almost like that first sign, like, oh, we've been numbing ourselves, but we're also feeling a call to magic. Like that's the thing that's saying, yes, you're here to like create that unity, to live more in union with spirit and magic and being human. I'm going to pause there. I don't know if I've gone on a tangent there, but like, does anything come up for you around that?
Yeah, two things actually. So before I get to the first part of what you said about repressing our emotions, you just made me think of, I think a lot of times people feel so drawn and called to be healers, in part because we don't want other people to have to suffer in the ways that we have. And so it's really like this call to wanting to protect others, to shield others from feeling the depth of suffering that we haven't quite worked out or understand within ourselves. We just know like, ooh, this isn't good. Let me help you not have to go through what I've gone through. On the other side, I think when we really do walk through that sacred flame, so to speak, and we go through our own dark night, then I think there's a different appreciation for, I want to hold space for you so that you can see that even the hardest aspects of this are for your highest good. So I think like our reasoning for wanting to help kind of shifts and changes. Our understanding around healing and the necessity starts to blossom in different ways. But with the repression of emotion, yeah, I think for so many of us, we grow up being shamed for expressing emotion. A lot of us are told that it's a sign of weakness, especially I think with a lot of women, thinking of how society has changed so much over time. And then women started going, say, in the workforce where they weren't before. And it was this environment that was so masculine in its setup and the bones of these institutions. And there was no room allowed for the feminine expression. So I think a lot of women then learned to repress. A lot of women, even prior to that, may have done it for reasons of safety to not, get in trouble or whatever it may have been. And then you have these women who then want to protect their daughters. And so then they teach their daughters, don't cry, suck it up, be strong. Because again, now they don't want their daughters to possibly suffer what they may have suffered. So many of us have been conditioned in many ways to lean heavily into the masculine and have totally disassociated just with the divine feminine and her expression and the energy of what that is, And part of, speaking of my mom again, I'm like, she's going to kill me if she listens to this. But so when I started to realize like why I repressed emotions so much, I thought of obviously the person who raised me. And my mother was an embalmer. So she would, her job, she loved it though, but she would go have to, pick up dead bodies and do embalming and all these things. And you can imagine in that career, you can't be crying and, doing all the things. And at the time when she started, she was one of the first and only female embalmers in Washington, D.C. So she was very much like in a boys' club, so to speak. So she also, because of her job, had to learn how to repress. And so she took that on as like it being a strength. So then she passed that on to me, like, no time for tears, pick yourself up. You got this, da, 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 right? She did it in a way of thinking she was helping me.
Yeah.
But now fast forward, she's 75, I think, and she still doesn't know how to process her emotion. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of us get it innocently and from a space of wanting to protect us or there may have been good intentions of why we may have been taught to repress, not realizing how damaging and harmful it really was.
Yes. Yeah, I really relate to that whole story as well. And again, of course, homeopathically, as we repress our emotions, that's when the body will start to express the things that have been suppressed. And that's why I think often this is from my own journey, I'm speaking to experience of my own journey, like that's how I think then our body begins to wake us up. And it's like almost coming back to our bodies reminding us, like they're showing us the way. Almost like the way I experience it is like they'll call us into that unity. If we're prepared to answer the call.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's so, once we do kind of soften around this acceptance of I'm not perfect and everything I've gone through has actually been a great teacher, depending on how I see it. Perspective is huge in this work. Like you could look at your life and go like, it was awful. I had a horrible hand that was dealt and did it. That's one way to view it. Not saying that's right or wrong, but what's true is what you make true for you. Someone else could go through the exact same experiences you had and look at it and say like, wow, that really gave me strength. That gave me clarity. That gave me understanding, and recognize, no, it wasn't fun or easy, but the benefit is it made me a kind, compassionate person. Right? So our perspective plays a huge part. And when we can finally soften from, again, those projections of just judging ourselves so harshly, then we can like have this deep appreciation for all that we got through that led us to here. We can have an appreciation for whatever was the catalyst that started to awaken that secret witch or allow this beautiful magician to come to the forefront and say, let me guide you. It's an aspect of you that was giving you this call. It's an aspect, it's something within you that was leading you towards exactly where you are in this work. It wasn't an accident. So, you start to appreciate whatever it was that led you to exactly where you are now. And it gives you like a sense of, awe and excitement for the potential of, wow, what else will I come to understand
Yeah.
about me?
I love that. I love that. And it's, again, it's bringing you back to this idea of like coming into wholeness and like embracing all of us.
Yeah.
And I think there's always something in that around like, we can kind of almost like, I think you've spoken to this a little bit, but like we can kind of compartmentalize our magic, like with a witch in secret or with a mum in public or, with a normal one at work. And really all of these are aspects of us. But also there's something there around like we think that the magic is outside of us.
Yes.
And really it's within. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the thing is so funny to me is now it's wild to watch anything that you really want. You start creating it, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, right? So I think back to, again, like the catalyst for me coming into this work. I was, again, working in a very stressful environment. And there was a part of me that hated it. There was a part of me that believed this work is killing me. I don't want to be here anymore. However, there was a louder part of me that was more committed to my responsibility. So I would have stayed. And so, the universe answers the call as it does. And I went through a layoff and, here goes the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for a lot of us, if you really step back and observe from a bird's eye view, you will see that you are living a lot of what you have been projecting or believing or speaking internally or externally to the universe. Even as simple as if you're always saying, I always pick the worst partners. I always da 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 da. And then you're curious, like, why does this keep happening? You have been spell casting. You have been saying the spell again and again and again. And now here you are, right? And so I think it's really interesting to recognize that everything that you look at, anyone listening, anything you witness in your environment right now is a creation. This stuff didn't fall out of the sky. We're all creative beings. But the thing is, too, to recognize even what we see in form or what we can touch or what we experience that is in the material realm, it started in the non-physical. It started as a thought. It started as an idea. And so, again, it starts to bring you into this like, oh, my God, how do we work? How do we function? So now I'm starting to recognize the power of my thought. The power of the thought that then impresses upon the power of my word, the power of my word that then impresses upon the power of my feeling. Now, you see, there's this link between like what I'm believing in my mind and then what I start to feel because of what I believe. And then here's my life. And a lot of times when we look out in the world and we're like, well, why does this person get to experience blah, blah, blah? I always tell people the difference between you and them is they did it or they had a different story. That's it.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, I think we've spoken about this before, maybe on your podcast, around the idea of like, we're essentially, the way I see it is like we're always creating something. It's just largely we're creating unconsciously, which I think is what you're speaking to. And I often, when secret witches come into this path, they often are kind of looking for a quick fix or a remedy. And so I often say to them, you don't need a quick fix. You are the remedy. Yes. And what I mean by that is kind of what you're saying there. And it's like, there's this sense of like looking out there, but ultimately we're creating as the remedy already. Like, I'm not bringing people here to like, be like, okay, I'm going to work with Rosa or Orem or, whatever the remedy is. And like, as if it's out there, like the remedy is already within them. It's just that they're likely already expressing the wounded state of that remedy. And our work is to see, like, almost like an onion, like peel back the layers of each remedy and be like, okay, what's this layer creating? Is it creating from wounding or gold? And so it's just like that, again, that knowing yourself through the remedies. And there's obviously, everybody has different ways, but it's almost pointing back to the same thing. Like, we're both talking about the same thing in different ways, which is that beautiful gift of like, it's the same spiritual wisdom wrapped in some different human package with some different human expression of it. But yeah, it's like there's what you're talking to is like, we're always manifesting. We're always manifesting something, whether it's from wounding or whether it's from truth.
And also recognizing that literally everything is within us. Everything. We're connected to everything. And we just emphasize what we amplify. We emphasize what we broadcast. So you can direct your mind and give a lot of attention to, again, like lower kind of beliefs, or you can heal and recognize, like, this is how I hold this. How can I see it differently? And then start to amplify a different type of projection and a different understanding. But you also remind me of Nicole. So in the system of Reiki, you're literally activating the divine intelligence that already exists within you. So when you get a Reiki attunement, it's not like someone's putting something in you that wasn't there. It's just like turning on a light switch, activating this higher frequency of life force that already existed within you. So now that you can start to acclimate and become more in relationship, again, with just this different layer of who you are. But then going a step further with the Reiki symbols, like, I don't know if you're familiar with, but you know, there's Reiki symbols. And a lot of people are taught the symbols as if, again, there's something outside of us that you just use externally. But the truth is the symbols are trying to unlock within your consciousness what they represent. To show you are an embodiment of that.
I love that. I've never thought about that. There's almost a sense of like archetypal symbology within Reiki. I love that.
100%.
That.
Yes. So it's like then you start to recognize, like, say, for example, the first symbol, a lot of people look at it as like the power symbol. It increases the flow. But really the translation of it means direct spirit. And we know it's a spiral. There's this intelligence with that symbol that's really saying spirit is here, where you're directing your mind, where you're spiraling into, like recognizing divine intelligence is exactly where you give your attention. And so that in of itself, if I look at you and I'm giving my attention to, whoa, look at the amazing creative being Nicole is. Oh my gosh, like what that's going to do to you unconsciously, what that's going to do to our connection now, what is vibrating between the two of us is going to be so much more like rich in frequency than if I were looking at you in all kind of judgment and all kinds of BS, right? So the point is to what you're saying, yes, it's all within us. And all of these tools and all of these languages and even what we're saying, the same thing in different ways, it's all to help us remember and to reactivate and come into relationship with. It's already there. It's already there.
I love that so much. So, what's coming up for me, and I think this is almost like there's a phases of the realization of this. I'm thinking of my own journey, and in particular, I don't know if you've ever come across Michael Beckwith's kind of almost like stages of creation.
He's the Agape Church guy or something.
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure, but I remember his model is something along the lines of when we first kind of step into the past, we're seeing life as like, oh, it's happening to us. And then as we start to kind of go deeper and deeper, we start to say, oh, okay, actually, maybe life is happening for us. And then we go deeper and it's like, oh, maybe actually, you know, life is creating through us. And then the last phase is like, okay, actually is creating as us. And so there's almost like a phase of like realizing that this is how, this is that unity, I guess, that union. It just came to me as you were sharing. I can't remember what made it come into my mind. I guess there's almost like a question of like, how do we, because I think what we can be tempted to do when we hear, you know, oh, well, we just have to almost like change our thoughts, is we kind of intentionally force that and be like, okay, I'm just going to change my thoughts and be thinking differently. Whereas the reality is there's almost like that journey of starting to see like where the thoughts are coming from, like where the wounds and the traumas have kind of had us think differently to being in connection or being in union as spirit, I guess you could say, if we're using his words. So I'm going to pause there and see if there's anything comes up there.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's funny because, you know, like how easy would that be? Gosh, we'd all be healed in 24 hours. But it reminds me of like what I shared with you about once my emotional dam broke. And I started being curious about like, where were all these emotions all this time, right? So I had to sit and reflect on, well, why did I suppress them in the first place? And then again, going back to like, oh, how I was raised. And then going beyond that, like, oh, well, look at what my mother did and what she would, you know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
going back to like, what was my grandma like, right? So I started to follow this thread back through my lineage of where the origin of this suppression may have even come from. Because it was more than just my mom's job, right? And so as that started awakening within me, this understanding, this new perspective, not just taking on this identity of like, oh, I'm just not an emotional person. A boo. Like, come on, let's go deeper, you know? So when I started kind of like cascading back to the curiosity of origin, not only did it give me a deeper appreciation and understanding of my mother, my grandmother, and even the ones that came before them that I never met, you know, it gave me a beautiful appreciation for what has been passed down, the reasons that it was, but it also gave me the sense of like liberation of, oh, and there's no need to carry this way anymore. I can understand why they may have to going generations back. It was a matter of life and survival. I can understand that. But now for my survival and my life and my quality of life, I have to embrace what they had to suppress. So then there's this honoring of like, wow, look at how things change. Look at how things adapt, right? And so it not only helps us to truly accept a different way of understanding things, it also helps us to appreciate again what we've gone through rather than being angry about it. It also helps us to change the emotion or, you know, temper some of that, what was misunderstood.
Yeah, I love that. What I'm hearing in that is this sense of like, coming back actually to what you said earlier, is the sense of like having compassion for both other humans and our ancestors and you know, all of that, and also for ourselves.
Yes.
Because I think what can happen is, again, when we start to open to, okay, actually, there's my body's telling me something and I've got to feel all these emotions, is we can jump to, well, why are we having these emotions? Why can't we just be normal? Like, why do we have to be so sensitive? And I think the more that we can, well, it'd be interesting to hear what you think, but, and I sense it's the same, but like, I think it's important to bring in that compassion because it feels like part of the alchemy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really had to start with me not having a woe is me. Like, you know, and that may sound harsh for some people, especially because we're in a time where it's so much of like, you know, there's this thing about our emotions and our feelings being validated, which I think it's very important for us to be seen and heard 100%. But I think it's a very thin line and very tricky where the acknowledgement then becomes the identity.
Yeah.
And so we have to really be able to acknowledge like, wow, this is what I have felt. This is what I have believed, all this and this. But if I don't attach to it and claim it as who I am, then what is it really? Right?
Yeah.
You know, they say like our emotions are messengers. There's story within what we feel. It's not just like, oh, I'm sad. What's the story behind it? There's story behind why you repress. There's story behind why you're afraid to look at certain things. There's story why you want to amplify and like, ooh, look at me for this, right? There's story behind everything. So we have to first like be very aware of there's a story here. And this goes right back to like the sub rosa. Part of the reason why some parts of your healing journey can be beneficial to hold in secrecy for a time, just so that you don't have to worry about those old triggers and ideas of like the projections again of shame of, oh, what will they say, and da 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 da, because that will potentially cause you to continue to repress. But if I can,
and it's also serving our medicine from the wound as well.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, you know, I just think that first hurdle is if I can be honest with myself, then I can really unravel that ball of curiosity and see where it leads.
I love that. And I love that you talk about it as story as well, because again, you know, there's so much gold into, for me, like I see story as like archetypal, like there's an archetypal remedy in our stories. And so it's just beginning, this is why, you know, it's beginning to look at the archetypal stories that we have created innocently as children, likely, like what archetypal stories have we created and then lived out the myth of in our lives. And so I'm wondering actually, given we're here to talk about the magician, like what is the how do you see the archetypal story of the magician? Because I know you've spoken to that a little bit, but I'm just curious, like, what if that brings up anything?
Yeah, so it's funny, I have my own oracle deck I created, and there's a section within the deck that mirrors the major arcana. And my version of the magician is called the wise ones. And instead of the elements or the tools of the magician being just objects, they're actually people. And these people represent all of the different elements. So for me, again, the magician is very much like you already are that. But what type of magician are you being? Are you an awakened magician? Are you a magician that's practicing unconsciously and haphazardly? Are you a magician that uses their magic and wields their magic from their fear? Right? You could be any kind of magician you want to be. But it's this whole thing of, again, coming in relationship to these different elements, your air, your mind, your water, your emotion, your fire, your will, your drive, your determination, and body, your earth, right? So now I understand the elements of my function. I can be a masterful magician. I can be very intentional about how I work with these different elements of my expression. I can be mindful enough to understand where I may need to conjure or work more with my air, where my fire may need a little bit of earth to temper it. I start to understand how these different aspects of myself intersect. And instead of letting them be like out of control, they're all, kind of like under my own spell, rather than them managing and controlling me, like being possessed by my emotion. Instead, I'm the one in my sovereignty, kind of conducting the way that my magic again is wielded. And we see the coming back to tarot, the devil card with them having the 5-pointed star upside down above his head. That really is symbolic of those elements ruling you rather than you ruling the elements. So the 5-pointed star upright, it really represents those 4 lower points as our 4 elements. But the highest point on that star is ether, which would be spirit. And it reminds me of one of my magic teachers always would use the phrase ora et labora, which means pray and work. But essentially what it means is, where are you wielding your magic from? Are you allowing yourself to direct your mind to the higher expression of what you are, and letting that fuel how you use these elements, your magician tools, so to speak? Or are you allowing your elements to rule you?
I love that so much. And there's so much synchronicity in that with how I view the witch, which of course is kind of similar archetypally. And like the witch and her creatrix power, and how she often will wield her creatrix power against herself unconsciously and innocently, because that's what we've learned to do as witches. So I love all that you just shared there. I'm just thinking where to go next. Let me just see what you had said about before we chose this topic. I think there's something around, and we might have already touched on this, but I know we talked about like energy work being mind, body, spirit, and not just energy. And is there anything to add around? Because I know Reiki can often be seen as like just energy. And I know we've touched on this, but I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you have to add to that.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's funny because, that's what I thought coming in. Like, who knew it was going to open the floodgates to how I think and how I feel and all of these things. But really at base level, I mean, it kind of points back to the magician. We are comprised of all of these elements. We are emotional beings. We are, we have consciousness. We're able to think. We're able to perceive all of these different these things. And so because of the nature of our design, it's all interconnected and woven into literally the expression of what we are. So it's, when we talk about energy work, even if you thought you were only focusing on energy, the movement of energy and life force can't not affect the way that you process thought. It can't not affect the way that emotion starts to move through you. So the beauty of it is energy kind of it holds it all, it moves it all. So where you may have repressed thoughts, or you may have repressed emotions, or you may feel stuck and stagnant, no motivation in your life, and you start working with energy, and now, like, to give a visual, it's like you're moving life force through your body, where before it had become kind of stuck and stagnant. And now all of a sudden this cleansing is happening through your system that will then cause whatever was repressed to start to move as it was meant to. And now it starts coming into your conscious recognition. Now you start to become aware of, oh, that's what I feel about this. I'm still holding on to that. That's how I perceive myself. This is how I perceive my life. It's all interconnected. So even if you thought you were just doing mental work, even if you thought you were just doing emotional work, you're doing energy work.
And that's that. There's something in that as well that I think's worth diving into. Because I think one of the things, particularly for the secret witch, who can kind of come into this path, and this is very much true of my own journey, and I think it's true of all of our journeys when we first kind of go into like playing with Reiki or, you know, having therapies. And so what I used to do is I'd go for Reiki and then have the healing and then be like, okay, cool, now I'm done. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you speak to there is almost like that deeper invitation to move from that place of like witch play into the deep work by engaging with, like, once we've had that healing activation, whatever it might be, then beginning to engage with what happens next. It's almost like that's the initial activation, and we often think that it's the final piece. It's like, okay, cool, we've gone into that healer and they've healed us. But what I see now is that almost like the way through into this deeper phase of magic and reclaiming and deeper unity is to begin to integrate and begin to see, like, okay, what's actually come from, like, what's been revealed next from that activation that I'm now here to work with, that's going to help me know myself to reclaim wholeness. I'm wondering if you want to speak to that.
Well, a couple of things. Yeah, we say things that both of our minds go all over the place.
I love it.
One of the things that with what you said, it brings up this whole idea of like cultivating our magic or cultivating our energy, right? So this is why you'll have certain people that may say go to a Reiki class, they have an attunement, they have an experience, and then they never practice. Versus someone who goes into this kind of teaching and then they continue to practice. So I can't tell you how many people I've met that say, oh, I took a Reiki class like 10 years ago, but I didn't do anything with it. I don't know. I don't feel connected to. You didn't practice. Like, yes, someone may have, it's coming to say like tending the flame, right? So you can light a candle, you can light a flame, you could light a torch, a flame that is supposed to like burn eternally, but it still may need, you know, support to allow that flame to continue to burn. You know, it's going to need the right environment. It's going to need the right care. The flame may get like, are you watching the flame? Are you giving it what it needs to continue its expression? You see? So there's again, this responsibility that comes online in this work that you can't be separate from. It is your expression. It is your expression as the witch. It is your expression as the magician. It is your expression as the human. It is your expression of, even if you want to say, I'm none of that, that's your choice too. But whatever it is, you are the one that gets to live the expression that you choose based on how deep you're willing to go into relationship with that. The other thing that you said, Nicole, is so funny. I really, going into energy work, yes, I was like, oh, it's energy work. Now, in a lot of the work that I do, I focus so heavily on mind. Because at the root of it all, again, our perception and how we think and what we believe and what we reject and all our stories play heavily into how we are in relationship with everything else. So for me, like energy work, again, even if you're not a practitioner of anything, because of the nature of your design, you are doing energy work. We're all doing it. It's like the unconscious magician. You might be an unconscious energy worker, right? You walk into a room, you feel the tension from people fighting. You meet someone and you feel their kindness. You feel it. Why? We're all expressing energy. We're all manipulating energy. You're an energy healer.
I actually love this because I've just got this visual in my mind now of all of us, and this feels true to me. Like we're all walking around going, doing the energy work and then being like, God damn it, why did you do that to me?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like, where people like yell at you, they're angry and you feel it. Like sometimes it feels like someone is literally like, it's an attack on your physicality. You feel it. So it's an experience of energetic expression. We're all energy workers, but similar to what we've been talking about, how conscious of you of how you're working your energy.
Yeah. I also want to be mindful of the fact that because I often speak to this as well myself, there are things that have happened in our lives that are traumatic and that have been done by others who are also wielding unconsciously their own kind of magician power. And that doesn't, what I want to say is like what we're speaking to here doesn't diminish like that experience that we've had.
No.
But I guess what I saw was moving from in through that Michael Beckwith's piece is like moving from, oh, this has happened to me to this is happening. It was that cycle of like, this is happening for me, this is happening as me, kind of moving through that. There was something else that jumped out as you were saying all of that. And it was just a simple thing that you used the example of flame. Because the way that I see witches and healers is archetypal phosphorus, which is, of course, on the end of a match. So I loved the analogy that you used there. You're like, oh, you light the flame and then, and you have to kindle that flame. And I guess that's kind of part of what phosphorus invites us to do, is to learn how to do that in a world where, we are sensitive and we do struggle with being able to wield our magician or our witch.
Yes. And to your point, Nicole, I mean, like talking about, the different experiences that we've had, and they were projecting their ability to be whatever kind of magician they are or were, And so it's also important for people to understand, like, this work doesn't just have the potential to amplify, or I'll say this, our existence doesn't give us just the potential to amplify our greatness, so to speak, our goodness, our kindness, our this. We have free will. Coming into body, coming into this realm, you can amplify whatever tools and how, and being the kind of magician you want to be. So it's not just the people that are like, oh, they're doing such good work. What a witch and a magician. No, you could go on the dark side of the street if you want to. And again, if we're not consciously engaged with how we're functioning, you run the risk of being like a darker magician. Now, your heart may not really want to do that. But again, it could be a result of what you went through and not fully understanding that there's other potential available to you. So this work just makes me, every day, I'm fascinated by what we are and what we're capable of.
Me too. I love that. I love what you just shared there. I'm wondering if there's any kind of practical piece that you've got as we come to a close, like practical magic that we can weave into everyday human life that helps us to kind of connect to our magician or our witch. If anything jumps out at you there.
I'd say one of the easiest things to do is, start having enough presence to witness what it is your inner dialogue is, and even what you're saying out of your mouth. So, pay attention to how you are walking through life today, and whatever it is you encounter, how do you describe it? How do you feel about it? What is your immediate thought around whatever that is? And then just take a moment to observe that thought and consider, if this thought were a spell, what am I casting? Not just to what I'm looking at or in connection with, but what kind of a potion is it starting to create within my being? Yeah. So I think that's one of the easiest ways first to even get to know ourselves, is to get to know the nature of how we think and how we see things. And again, don't wrong yourself or shame yourself about your thoughts, but be curious about why. What's the origin? What have I gone through that would make me perceive something this way? And is it the only truth available for how I might perceive this?
Yeah, I love that so much. It's reminding me of a post I did a few weeks back about the different remedy spells that we're speaking, like what remedies are we speaking into the world. So I love that piece about like what spells are you speaking. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Ooh, yeah, love that. And just before we complete, I would love to know as well, because I think a lot of secret witches might be listening and thinking, yeah, that sounds great. And I still don't believe or trust that I have magic
Yeah.
when we're lost in the humanity of it all. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you would say to them, like if there's a woman who's feeling like she's lost her magic and she's hearing this maybe on like an intellectual level, because I think we can also do that. Like, is there anything that you would say to her?
Yes, absolutely. Whatever you're going through right now that's causing you to feel that way is part of you reclaiming your magic. True story. Sometimes the darkest, hardest, most disconnected experiences we have are really some kind of setup, so to speak, that are helping us to recognize or give us a pathway back to our remembering, giving us that ache, that desperation of there has to be another way. There has to be something. There's something in you where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So it is the catalyst for you reaching out to like a Nicole and saying, teach me, what do I need to know? How do I do this? Right. So a lot of times when we're in these spaces where we feel like something's wrong, it is the rightest thing that could be going on for us, because it really is usually that catalyst or that thing that broadcasts to the universe, help me. So really all we have to do is kind of pay attention to what is showing up, or what am I feeling called towards? Who am I called to reach out to help me understand where I am in this moment? So yeah, wherever you are, you might not see it now, but one day you'll look back hindsight and say, I understand how that contributed to my journey.
Yeah, I love that. I always call that like the initiation point.
Yes.
There's a gorgeous quote or poem by Lucy Pierce in Medicine Woman that speaks to that journey so beautifully. I haven't got the poem on me now. Maybe I can find it because it feels like it's. Do you know the one I mean?
No.
Let me just see if I can find it because it's really gorgeous. If you've got time.
Yes.
Let me just see where it is.
I block time for you and I, because I never know how it's going to go.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So this is by Lucy Pierce, and she says, it may be the first day of your life, the prime of youth, or several decades in, when Medicine Woman calls you. Your name on her list, her new initiate. She crept in while you were sleeping, when you overexerted, when you kissed him or ate that, or lived there, or pushed too hard just one time too many. She crept in and curled up in your cells, your heart, waiting to meet you, longing to know you, longing for you to know her at last. And what feels like the end is in fact a beginning of a new road, an unknown path of pain and healing. She will show you how to slow down. She will run her fingers roughly through your life and help you sort the busyness from what matters. She will show you how to find support and who you really are beyond your roles and expectations, and even more beyond the system the world has forced you into. She transports you into the timeliness of big pains and tiny joys, initiates you into your strength, into your love, into your courage, into a world beyond your control. She sent me an invitation. I see yours too, tucked up in your bag, amongst all the receipts and bills, the pens and detritus of life. Take it out. It is time.
Wow. Please send that to me. Honey, that is perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. No, that is so perfect. But you said curled up in your cells. I was like, yes, that is the thing. Like, again, it's in us, and something will be the catalyst to awaken it. And at first it's confusing, but just, you can never even imagine how things will begin to unfold and how they'll continue to unfold. But please send that to me. That is
I will.
Perfect.
Yes. I knew you'd love that. Yeah.
Yes.
Gorgeous. I love Lucy as well. She's been a guest on our show, and yeah, she's magical as well. Of course she is, because we all are. Goes without saying. Thank you so much, Yolanda. I've absolutely loved this. I've got goosebumps at the end as well. So yeah, or truth bumps as I call them. But yeah, I would love to know. Well, I'd love for you to be able to share with us so that people can find more about you. Like, where can people find out more? What are you working on? They might be interested in anything you want to share.
Yeah, so you can find everything about my work on my website, theenergeticalchemist.com. I am trying to get better on social media. On Instagram, I'm at Reiki Radio. And what I'm working on right now, I'm in the middle of teaching things But the only thing I have upcoming after what I'm doing now is in August, I open Oracle School, which is 8 weeks, 16 classes, and we go deep into not just using Oracle as guides and mirrors and teachers, but really tapping into how to clarify the way you work with your own intuitive abilities. So that starts in August. I'm excited about that. And
Gorgeous.
that's all for, then we'll plan next year.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. As ever,
Thank
it's
you.
been a complete joy to have you. And I loved the deep dive today. It was really beautiful.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Nicole. I hope to do it again soon.
Yeah. I absolutely love my deep dives with Yolanda. Here are my takeaways. Firstly, we are always creating, either unconsciously from wounding or consciously through energetic integrity. Our thoughts, feelings, and words are spells that help shape our lives. True magic is not about escaping humanity, but integrating it. Healing begins by descending into the body and softening into our emotional truth. Sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a sacred gift, and learning to honour it can guide us back to our wholeness, power, and magic. Energy work unifies mind, body, and spirit, revealing the deeper self and activating our innate healing intelligence. The archetype of the magician, or creatrix, teaches us to master our inner elements: mind, air, emotion, water, will, fire, and body, earth, in service to spirit, ether. You are the remedy. Your lived experience holds the exact magic you are here to embody and offer.